చందన్న డైరీ మైనింగ్స్లోని కెమికల్ స్టాక్స్ మంచి అట్రాక్టివ్ వాల్యుయేషన్ దొరుకుతుందని చెప్పారు కదా. సో కెమికల్ స్టాక్స్లో ఇన్వెస్ట్ చేసేద్దాం. ఈ కెమికల్ స్టాక్లో ఇన్వెస్ట్ చేద్దామా లేక ఈ కెమికల్ స్టాక్లో ఇన్వెస్ట్ చేద్దామా? ఎక్కడేంట్రా బాబు, ఇన్ని కెమికల్ స్టాక్స్ ఉన్నాయి, దేంట్లో ఇన్వెస్ట్ చేయాలరా బాబు?
ఎంతేజా ఫ్రస్ట్రేషన్లో ఉన్నావా?
అవునన్నా, మీ డైరీ మైనింగ్స్లోని కెమికల్ స్టాక్ మంచి అట్రాక్టివ్ వాల్యుయేషన్ దొరుకుతుందని చెప్పేసి అన్నారు.
అవును.
సో ఇక్కడ చూస్తే ఒకళ్ళు వచ్చే స్పెషల్ కెమికల్ స్టాక్స్ అంటున్నారు, ఇంకోళ్ళు బల్క్ కెమికల్ స్టాక్స్ అంటున్నారు, ఇంకోళ్ళు ఫ్లోరోకెమికల్ స్టాక్స్ అంటున్నారు. దేంట్లో ఇన్వెస్ట్ చేయాలో అర్థం కావట్లేదు నాకు అసలు.
అదాని కన్ఫ్యూజన్. నువ్వే కాదు, దీని రిలేటెడ్గా మన వ్యూవర్స్లో కూడా చాలా మంది కన్ఫ్యూజ్ అయ్యి ఉండొచ్చు. సో అందుకనే అన్నయ్య జీవన్ పట్వా సార్ని తీసుకొచ్చి ఇంటర్వ్యూ చేశాడు. ఆ ఇంటర్వ్యూలో ఆయన ఏ కెమికల్ స్టాక్స్లో ఇన్వెస్ట్ చేయాలి అండ్ ఏ కెమికల్ స్టాక్స్ని అవాయిడ్ చేయాలి అండ్ దాంతోపాటు ఆయన ఏ కెమికల్ స్టాక్స్ మీద బుల్లిష్గా ఉన్నారన్నది కూడా షేర్ చేశారు. అండ్ వీడియోలో ఇంకో బోనస్ ఏంటంటే చివరిలో అన్నయ్య కొన్ని ఇండివిజువల్ స్టాక్స్ రిలేటెడ్గా ఆయన క్వశ్చన్స్ అడిగాడు అండ్ ఆయన కూడా దాని గురించి క్లియర్గా ఆన్సర్ చేశారు. ఆ వీడియో మొత్తం చూసినట్లయితే నీకు క్లియర్గా అర్థమైపోతుంది, నీకు కన్ఫ్యూజన్ క్లారిటీ వచ్చేస్తుంది.
థ్యాంక్ యూ అన్న, ఇందాక నుంచి కొట్టుకుంటున్నా దేంట్లో విషయాలు తెలియక నాకు.
ఓకే, సో గైస్ తేజకే కాదు మీకు కూడా ఈ కెమికల్ స్టాక్స్ రిలేటెడ్గా కన్ఫ్యూజన్ ఉండి ఉండొచ్చు కదా. సో అందుకనే అన్నయ్య ఇంటర్వ్యూ చేశాడు. మీరు ఈ ఇంటర్వ్యూ చూసినట్లయితే మీరు ఏ కెమికల్ స్టాక్స్లో ఇన్వెస్ట్ చేయాలన్నది మీకు క్లియర్గా అర్థమైపోతుంది. అండ్ ఈ ఇంటర్వ్యూని ప్లే చేసే ముందు నేను మీకు ఇస్తున్న టార్గెట్ ఏంటంటే ఈ వీడియోకి 10,000 లైక్స్ ఇవ్వడానికి ట్రై చేయండి. అండ్ వీడియో మొత్తం చూసిన తర్వాత ఈ వీడియో మీ ఫ్రెండ్స్ అండ్ ఫ్యామిలీ మెంబర్స్కి హెల్ప్ఫుల్ అవుతుందంటే వీడియో అయిపోయిన తర్వాత వాళ్ళకి షేర్ చేయండి. సో లెట్స్ స్టార్ట్ ద వీడియో నౌ.
హలో గైస్, వెల్కమ్ టు మనీ పర్స్. లెట్స్ లెర్న్ సంథింగ్ న్యూ టుడే. ఈరోజు మనతో జీవన్ పట్వా సార్ ఉన్నారు. చాలా మందికి జీవన్ పట్వా సార్ గురించి తెలియదు. జస్ట్ ఏ స్మాల్ ఇంట్రడక్షన్ ఇస్తాను. 2012 నుంచి కన్సిస్టెంట్ గా హీ డెలివర్డ్ 50% CAGR రిటర్న్ తన పోర్ట్ఫోలియోలోని. ఈరోజు మనతోని ఎస్పెషల్లీ మనకు చాలా మందికి తెలుసు కెమికల్ సెక్టర్ లో చాలా మంచి బూమ్ మనం చూస్తున్నాం. కమింగ్ డేస్ లో కూడా చాలా మంచి గ్రోత్ చూడొచ్చని మనం ఎక్స్పెక్ట్ చేస్తున్నాం. బట్ కానీ చాలా మంది రీటైల్ ఇన్వెస్టర్స్ లో ఉండే బిగ్గెస్ట్ కన్ఫ్యూజన్, కెమికల్ సెక్టర్ అనగానే ఏ కెమికల్ స్టాక్స్ లో ఇన్వెస్ట్ చేయాలి, ఏ కెమికల్ స్టాక్స్ ని అవాయిడ్ చేయాలన్నది చాలా పెద్ద కన్ఫ్యూజన్ ఉంటుంది. ఆ కన్ఫ్యూజన్ మొత్తం ఈరోజు జీవన్ సార్ మనకి కంప్లీట్లీ క్లియర్ చేయన్నారు. హీఈస్ గోయింగ్ టు షేర్ us complete information about entire chemical sector today. Thank you, Jeevan sir, for accepting our invitation. It was really, we are delighted to host you. I'm sure my viewers will have a lot of learnings on specialty chemical theme today.
Thanks a lot, Sai, for hosting me. It's nice to be on your channel. So good evening, everybody, all your investors. So shall I start sharing the screen?
Yes, sir.
Today we are going to talk about how to pick multi-baggers in the pharma and chemical sector. I have spoken in one of the webinar how to pick the multi-baggers. So I have shared the multi-bagger framework, but today we are going to speak specifically for the pharma and the chemical sector. The first thing that you need to understand when you are identifying the multi-bagger, you need to identify the structural theme. If you are able to identify the structural theme and if you are able to invest in the theme early on, then you are basically on for a multi-bagger. When I say structural theme, the structural theme is basically the theme which runs for a very long period. So it runs for 10, 15, 20 years. So even if you are a little late in the structural theme, you will make money because that theme goes on for a very long period of time. So I feel chemical sector is a next big opportunity. It is standing where IT was standing in 1992. And I'll give you the analogy between IT and chemical in the next slide. So when I look at chemical and pharma sector, it requires more domain expertise. So if I compare it with say other sectors like FMCG or banking, in chemical and pharma, you need more domain expertise. It's more a technical term that you need to understand. Every company is a different story. So it's more of a bottom-up investing. And you cannot apply sector approach to these companies. So you need to understand each and every company differently. And that's where basically it's difficult to invest in this particular sector. And that's where you can actually make outsized returns in the sector. So with time, as you spend more and more time in the sector, your understanding of the sector increases. And that's where basically you can identify multi-bagger opportunities. Another easier way to invest in this particular sector is to identify the management with the right intent and the execution capability. If you are able to identify the right management, you don't need to dig deeper into the sector. If the management is smart, he will find the right opportunities for you and he will make it big for you. So just giving the analogy between IT and chemicals. So Indian IT started as supplying human resources to the world. So it was the cost arbitrage was the main driving growth factor for the IT industry. So we started as a pure vanilla services to the global customers. From pure services, we move on to providing the solutions. We started doing consulting, IT consulting. We started product designing, architecture, building. So we basically moved up the value chain. And now if you actually see today, there are multiple large opportunities which are lying in the IT sector ahead of us, like digital, cloud, analytics, artificial intelligence, blockchain, etc. So I think the similar story is going to play out in chemicals. So if you look at IT export in 2000, it was just $4 billion, whereas the GDP was $470 billion. So it was less than 1% in 2000, whereas in 2021, that is almost 7 to 8%. So also more than 8% of the GDP. So the IT export has actually grown from $4 billion to almost $200 billion in last 20 years. So it's almost 50 times, right? So the similar thing I think is going to happen in the chemical sector. There will be, so in chemical, what we started as manufacturing the building blocks and the commodity chemicals, slowly we moved up into the specialty chemicals. So in last 8-10 years, Indian chemical companies has spent a lot of resources for R&D. They have developed long-term relations with multiple MNCs. The China Plus One factor is also driving the growth in the chemical sector. The China cost in the China has also increasing because of the relocation of the plants to the inner Mongolia. There has been increase in the transportation cost, increase in the labor cost. So overall, we are now at par with China in terms of the cost in the specialty chemical sector. So this will basically now drive the growth in the Indian specialty chemical sector. So I typically say that we are at the inflection point. Why? Because in last 4 or 5 years, we are working with a lot of MNC companies. When you work in the specialty chemical, you basically need to develop particular molecule, particular product for that particular company. So the development and the validation cycle actually is very long. It takes 2 to 3 years or 4 years to develop a particular product. But once you develop the product, or once you make a particular application for a company, then the contract runs for a very long time. So it's almost 10-year long-term contract. And you can see that in last 1 year, many Indian chemical companies have actually bagged a lot of large long-term contracts. So Navin Fluorine is the case in point, Heikel is the case in point, and Deepak is a case in point. So there are a lot of chemical companies which have actually bagged very large long-term contracts. So as companies from here on, I think the chemical companies will grow both in volumes and the value. And as they move up the value chain, their margins will improve. Their return ratios will also improve. So there are two key trends in the chemical sector today. One is import substitution and another is export of the specialty chemicals. When I say import substitution, India imports almost $56 billion of chemicals every year, okay, and it exports $41 billion of chemicals. The total size of the chemical industry in India is $178 billion, whereas the total size of the global chemical industry size is $4 trillion. So we are only 4% of the global chemical industry, whereas we import $56 billion every year. So the two key trends is import substitution and second is export opportunities. If you look at the use of chemicals in our daily life, it is actually increasing, right from personal care, home care, crop care, health care to industrial applications. Everything that we see around us is everything uses chemicals. So be it shampoo, soap, powder, paste, plastic, adhesive, clothes, shoes, mobile, everything, whatever you think about, every application has a chemical in it. So I feel the next big story is chemicals. Next 10 years, you will see a lot of TCS and Infosys coming out of chemical sector. There will be many chemical companies which will have market cap more than 1 lakh crore, 2 lakh crore, 5 lakh crore, which is there in IT today. So this is what the main theme. Now, how to invest in chemicals? So what is the framework to analyze the chemical company? So I'll just skip this slide. You can go through this slide. It basically tells about what is the expected growth rate of the specialty chemical industry. So this is a FICCI report which says that specialty chemical will grow at 12% in next 5 or 6 years. And 50% of the specialty chemical industry is dyes and pigments and agrochemicals. India has surplus in the building blocks, whereas it is at deficit in the intermediates and the bulk chemical, which they import from China, and then they export specialty chemicals to the world. This is sector-wise. I have given the attractiveness of each of the segment in the chemical industry. So if you actually look at, there are two segments. One is flavor and fragrances and nutraceutical, and second is the personal care. So both these segments will have much higher growth rate. They have much higher entry barriers. They have much higher product specialization, and the end market growth potential is also higher. So if you actually investing as per the segment in the chemical industry, I think these are the two segments to focus at.
Okay,
So
so
I have just
a common
divided-
investor should need to focus in these two segments because you expect a good growth from there.
Yes.
Okay.
So there are three factors that one needs to look at. Obviously, one is the end market growth potential, which is highest for these two segments. Secondly, what is the entry barrier in this segment? So if you actually look at dyes and pigments, the entry barriers are very, very low because it's a very low capex industry. It's very polluting industry. And there are no much of a differentiation in the industry. So the entry barriers in dyes and pigments will be very low. If you look at these two segments, the entry barriers are very, very high because you need to develop specific applications for specific companies, right? So there is always the validation period, which is long. The development cycle is very long. So entry barriers for these two sectors is very high. The product specialization is also very high because it varies from customer to customer. So if someone is supplying to say Givaudan, right? So Privi is actually having contract with say Givaudan. So for Givaudan, it has to develop that particular product, which takes 3 or 4 years, right? It has to get validated from the customer and then only it starts supplying. So the product specialization is also very high for these particular segments. So I have divided the industry in application wise and the chemistry wise. So first let's understand end use application wise, the categories of the chemical industry. So as I said, dyes and pigments and agrochemical, these are the largest segment of the Indian chemical industry. Apart from that, you have players in rubber chemical, textile chemical, construction chemical, surfactants. So Galaxy is basically leaders in surfactants. Flavors and fragrances, where SHK, Privi are the leaders. Then you have food colors, or there are oleochemicals for the food industry, which fine organics make. Camelin Fine basically make antioxidants for the food industries. Then there are water chemical, which ion exchange is a leader. BASF and ion exchange are the leaders in water chemicals. So this is as per the application. I have just divided the industry.
Okay.
So if you ask me in this particular chart, I will be more focused towards flavors and fragrances, because as I said, it's basically very specific to the client or the customer. So the development and the validation cycle is very long. And once you're able to cross that, then the contracts are for large contracts for the longer term, right? So I'll typically go for F&F. In agrochemical, I'll come to the value chain in the agrochemical. I'll explain what I like in the agrochemicals. Surfactant is a very niche area, but again, if you look at the margins in the surfactants, the margins are not that great. The Galaxy is now getting into specialty surfactants where margins could be a little higher. But the existing portfolio of Galaxy, you will see the margins are not that great. Because it supplies to FMCG sector, so there is obviously buyers have more bargaining powers. So obviously Galaxy can't make that kind of margins there. In construction chemicals, Pidilite is the leader. The valuation, I'm not very comfortable with the valuation of Pidilite and all. So I'll try to just explain about the agrochemical value chain and the F&F, so flavor and fragrances value chain. So coming to the agrochemical value chain, if you look at this value chain, I typically look for the technical. So this is where I think the opportunity exists. This technical is nothing but API in the pharma sector. So this is something similar to the API in the pharma sector. So there are players like Bharat Rasayan, Aztec, Shivalik, Punjab Chemicals and all. The characteristic of this particular value chain is so they basically develop molecules for MNC players or the global agro majors, right? And once they are able to develop that particular molecule, they get a larger, longer contract. So it's more of a kind of, I would say, custom synthesis, or it is more of a contract manufacture. So here the visibility of the revenue is there, plus there is a margin protection that you have. So this is what basically I will try to focus on the technicals. Though I don't own any of these companies in agro, In formulation and marketing, you have Dhanuka, Sharda, Sumitomo, and other players. Whereas PI, UPL, Bayer, Syngenta, they basically cover the entire value chain. So they have their own R&D, they have their APIs, formulation, and marketing. So PI is obviously one of the best company, I would say, in the agrochemical, but the growth seems to be tapering out in case of PI now. UPL has got pretty integrated operations. They have got multiple geographies. So I think UPL will be a player to watch for.
The Brazil drought, once it get, I'm saying their exposure to Brazil is pretty high.
So they are doing multiple things. So UPL is actually doing multiple things. Their acquisition that they did 2 years back, the large acquisition, Arista, that's a very good acquisition. That's what I feel. But we need to see how they are able to integrate that with itself. So that's one of the key monitorable in case of UPL. If I look at dyes and pigment, as I said, it's a very highly polluted industry. No entry barriers, low capex required. Chinese competition is very, very high. So I will typically try to avoid the dyes segment. In pigment side also, I'll be more focused on specialty pigments, or what you call high performance pigments, which Sudarshan Chemical is into. So the part of their top line actually comes from high performance pigments, where the margins are also high. The competition is also very low. In flavors and fragrance, again, in the value chain, if you look at, ingredients is something where which is similar to API in the pharma, or which is similar to your technicals in the agrochemical. So again, these players have stand a chance for contract manufacturing or custom synthesis. They can get long-term contract. Like you can see, the Privi is basically had a long-term contract from Givaudan recently.
Yes.
If you look at Oriental aromatics, then Privi and Oriental actually are into the similar kind of products, but the process of Privi is very different from Oriental. So Privi has got certain advantage in terms of the process over Oriental. So I will basically say Privi is much better than Oriental. So Privi makes the aroma chemicals from the paper pulp, whereas Oriental makes aroma chemical from the pine, so turpentine oil, which comes from the GTO, which is from China. So raw material volatility is higher in case of Oriental. Privi has got lesser volatility in the raw material. Now, this is something which is most important, I feel. So I have divided industry according to the chemistry or the molecules. I feel investment should be done based on the chemistry on the molecules. So based on the attractiveness of the chemistry and the molecule. The reason is, once the company is specialized in a particular chemistry or the molecule, they have got a process innovation. So they can actually optimize the processes. They can do a lot of backward and forward integration. So their cost of production is always lesser. So they can actually become a cost leader in those particular chemistries or the molecules. And that's where they can actually, and they can supply to multiple application, multiple industries. So they have a diversification in terms of the end user applications. For example, if you look at Aarti, they have established their expertise in the benzene chemistry. So they have developed a lot of downstream applications from the benzene chemistry. So they have become kind of, I would say, there are a lot of process optimization done for the benzene chemistry. So they are leaders in the benzene downstream products now. And they supply to dyes and pigment, they supply to agrochemical, they supply to pharma, they supply to personal care. So they have got diverse applications now on the benzene chemistry. Similar thing goes with phenol and acetone, which Deepak Nitrate has the platform created. So phenol and acetone has multiple downstream applications. They can get into the bisphenol, they can get into the polycarbonates, they can get into PAP, they can get into solvents. So there are multiple downstream applications they can get into. And since they have their own phenol and acetone plant, their efficiency will be much higher than the other place. Fluorination is another clean chemistry. So right now there is a trend of moving towards cleaner chemistry and greener chemistry. So fluorination is a cleaner and greener chemistry. There are multiple opportunities in the fluorination, very large opportunities. So there are a lot of applications actually moving towards fluorine molecules. So Navin, Fluorochem, SRF, they are the leaders in the fluorination. So if you look at greener or cleaner kind of chemistry, then I would say clean science, Tattva Chintan, then fluorination, then phosgenation, they are all part of the cleaner and the greener chemistry. So if you look at phosgenation chemistry, Poshak is one of the leader in the phosgenation. They are doing it since last 40 years. It's very, very lethal gas, but they are able to do it without any accident. So that basically tells about their processes. So I will basically, while investing, I'll typically go for the chemistry which is attractive, which has got multiple opportunities, downstream opportunities, and where the player has got some process innovation done. Okay. So this is how I will invest in the particular chemistry. Coming to Indian pharma classification, so I have divided Indian pharma industry into three parts. One is players which are focused on the exports, players which are majority into domestic pharma, and the players which are into API and CRAMS. So for me, if you ask me the opportunities in the pharma sector, I'll be more focused towards CDMO opportunities. I'll be more focused to complex API opportunities, 505B2 opportunities, and para 4 opportunities. The reason I'm not too interested in the export opportunities is because there's a fierce competition in the export side, the generic side. We have seen that in last 5 years. What has happened to Lupin or Sun Pharma, Aurobindo, Cadila, you have seen the numbers, you have seen the price. I think there has been a very intense competition in the generic market. So I'll typically try to avoid the exports oriented player. So even Biocon, even the opportunity for biological drugs is going to be very, very large. I think biosimilar is something same as a generic chemical drugs. The difference is in case of generic chemical drug, they are exactly same as the innovator drug. Whereas in biosimilar, they are not exact copy. There are some differences. So that's why it is called biosimilar, right? So for a biosimilar, it's very difficult to get the market share. So in chronic therapies, typically a patient is already using a particular innovator brand. It's very difficult for him to shift to the biosimilar. So it's very difficult for a biosimilar player to get the market share. And that's where basically I'm not that positive on, say, Biocon. Gland, I like Gland because of its execution capabilities and because of its injectable capabilities. Sun Pharma is getting into some of the 505B2 opportunities, developing the complex API portfolio. I'll try to look at Sun Pharma and Gland, but rest I think I'll skip. In case of CRAMS or CDMO, I think Divi's is the best in terms of the execution capability, though 50% of Divi's is CDMO, 50% is generic. Syngene is more of a CRO right now, clinical research organization, but they are now putting the manufacturing, so CDMO part. Suven Pharma is 100% CDMO. Laurus Lab has got one of its vertical as CDMO. In terms of, so I own Suven Pharma and Laurus Lab only in entire this Indian pharma. So I hold only
Suven, I think you have invested in single.
Yeah, I'm holding it from very, very long time. So I'm holding it since last 9 years. Also Laurus Lab I'm holding since very long time. There are other players like Dishman, Newland, Heikel, and Solara, but we need to see the execution capability of these people, which they are not yet proven, I think. So this is about the pharma opportunity. There are Natco Pharma is also there, which actually more into para 4 opportunities. So it has got multiple para 4 opportunities. Para 4 opportunities are typically very large opportunities. The cash flow from those opportunities will be very large. Suven working on 505B2 opportunities. Sun Pharma is also working on some opportunities. So this is what the opportunities I'll typically look at from the investing angle. If you ask me whether chemical is better or pharma is better, okay, I'll say chemical will be much better than the pharma industry, because in pharma there is a lot of regulation part, competition part. There are multiple moving parts that you need to understand when you invest in the pharma sector. So you need to really try to identify the companies which has a differentiated offering rather than having a generic offering. In chemical, I think chemical industry is supplying to multiple different industries. So they are supplying to agrochemical, they're supplying to pharma, they're supplying to personal care, they're supplying to paints, coatings, everything. So the chemical sector has got huge tailwind. So I will rather say chemical will definitely outperform the pharma sector. That's what I feel.
And another thing, pharma is already a dominant player. India is a dominant player, and chemical, we are just
we are just starting. We are starting in the yes. Chemical is still very small in terms of Indian chemical industry. So pharma, I would say it's almost $20 billion. That's what we export. if I remember correctly. Whereas in chemical, it's very small. So I think chemical will should outperform the pharma going ahead. This is the investment framework that I have for the. So there are four major things that you need to look at. One is safety and compliance. Second is product portfolio. Third is execution capability. Fourth is ability to scale.
Can I just take a minute? Okay.
Yes.
Guys, whoever watching this video, my only suggestion is just focus on this slide. This is the very, very important slide, because when you are investing in a chemical company, once you understand this framework, then only invest in it so that you can actually hold it for a longer period. So go ahead.
Right. Yes. So I think safety and compliance is the most important parameter when choosing a company. Just try to look at the history, the track record, historical track record of a particular company, whether they have got any kind of plant accidents, any kind of pollution control board notice, any kind of US FDA warning letter, import alert, whether the company has got responsible care logo. The responsible care logo basically gives you a threshold where it basically says that the company is at least having some safety and compliance practices, whether they have got zero discharge policy. So I think, and we have seen a lot of example in last 5-10 years, right? In last year itself, you must be remembering there are a lot of example where there has been plant accidents, there has been USFDA compliance issues. So I think this is one of the best, I would say this is one of the most important factor that one needs to look at. The second is obviously the product portfolio, where you need to look at the leadership, you need to look at the innovation. So innovation can be on the product innovation, it can be a process innovation, differentiation in the product portfolio, the diversification in the product portfolio, and which are the end user industry it caters to. So in case of chemical, whether so if the company products are catering to say pharma industry, or if it is catering to pharma or personal care, then the margins will be much higher. If it is catering to obviously dyes and pigments, margins will be much lower. If it's catering to agrochemical, margin will be average, right? So based on the end user industry, you can understand what kind of margin profile this particular company can have. Coming to the next two parameters, which are I think will define your whether you can get the multi-baggers. So I think execution capability and ability to scale. If you are able to get the right companies on these two parameters, I think that's what the multi-bagger will come from. So in case of execution capabilities, I think Deepak, PI, Aarti and SRF, they have demonstrated excellent execution capabilities in the chemical side. On pharma side, Divi's, Laurus and Gland has demonstrated excellent execution capabilities. In case of ability to scale, again, Deepak, Aarti, Vinati, Laurus, Sinjan. I'll come to Deepak and Laurus and I'll explain you what I mean by ability to scale and what I mean by execution capability. So there is a difference between execution capability and ability to scale. So we'll see that difference with the example. So these are the four parameters that one needs to look at. The last two parameters are basically the parameter which will define the multi-baggerness of the stock. So these are two my favorite stocks. So I basically call them businesses of the decade. So when I think of these two stocks, they are basically execution, innovation, and ability to scale. These are the three parameters where I don't think there is any match with Laurus Lab in the sector or Deepak Nitrate in the sector. So we'll see so I've just given some data to demonstrate the execution capability of these two companies. So Laurus has spent almost 2,000 crore over last 5 years. Similar capex will be spent in next 3 years. And thereafter, every year it will be generating similar kind of free cash flow. Yeah. So this is what the execution is. The same thing goes for Deepak Nitrate, 1,800 crore capex in last 5 years. Same will happen next 3 years. Now after the QIP, I think the capex can actually go much higher. So right now we don't have the details, so I'm not putting it. And thereafter, every year they will be generating similar kind of cash flow, free cash flow I'm seeing from the operation. So next 5 years from FY25 onwards, they will be generating almost 10,000 crore free cash flow in next 5 years. And that's big. The multiple opportunities are there to reinvest that cash flow at attractive ROC. So I have already explained the opportunities for Deepak Nitrate, the downstream opportunity that Deepak has to redeploy this cash flow. In case of Laurus, they have got into multiple other segments like Laurus Bio, Laurus CDMO, formulation, non-ARV business. So there are multiple opportunities for Laurus as well to redeploy this cash flow. If you look at the cell CAGR, Laurus Lab, it's 22%, PAT CAGR 49%. compared to Divi's, which is 13% and 12%. ROC has been much higher than Divi's, 40%. In case of Deepak Nitrate, the sales CAGR was 26%, PAT CAGR 65%, which is much higher than the players like Aarti, Atul, or PI, with the much higher ROC that it is able to generate. So this is the execution capability of both the companies. If I talk about the innovation, Laurus has got more than 200 process patents, so they are able to identify the molecules. They are able to create the process innovation for those molecules and create the cost leadership in the world in those particular molecules. So they have got world leadership in almost 8 products, and they aspire to have the leadership in 15 products. They have also done some technology innovation in the formulation side. So they are using monolayer technology instead of bilayer technology, where your speed actually increases by 3 times. In case of Deepak Nitrate, they have done multiple process optimization, multiple their product by they have done backward forward integration, which actually made them the cost leader in multiple products like nitrotoluenes, para-nitrotoluenes, DASDA, phenol, acetone. They are cost leader in all these products. They have got almost 60-70% market share in DASDA in India. In phenol acetone, they have got almost 80%, 90% market share in India. They are even exporting phenol and acetone to China. So it basically speaks about the cost leadership that they have in these particular products. Coming to ability to scale. So now you can understand the difference between the execution and the ability to scale. So when I talk about ability to scale, Laurus is able to scale their individual businesses very fast in last few years. So if I look at ARV business, they are able to scale that business to 3,500 crores in just 10 years. If you look at their formulation business, in just 3 years, they are able to come to 2,000 crores from zero. If you look at their CDMO business, they are able to come to 700 crores in 6 years. And next 3 years, I'm expecting it will be 1,500 crores. It can be even higher than 1,500 crores. In biologics, they have recently acquired Richcore 1.5 years back, and they can become 750 crore business in next 3 years. So this is what I mean by ability to scale. How fast you are able to scale your individual businesses or individual verticals. Same is the case with Deepak Nitrate. So they put up a phenol plant in 3 years back. They are doing almost 4,000 crore sales in phenol this year, and they will be doing almost $1 billion sales in next 3 years. So this is what is mean by ability to scale. When I talk about Deepak Nitrate, I think phenol and acetone is what is the key to the treasure. So there are multiple downstream applications of phenol and acetone, and by putting a phenol acetone plant, they have actually created a very strong entry barrier. So no other company can even think of getting into those downstream products. So that's where they basically create a very strong entry barriers. So if you look at the downstream opportunity, just look at the product portfolio of Vinati, Camlin, Galaxy, Valiant, Clean Science. So they all buy phenol from Deepak Nitrate, and they basically make the downstream products. So that basically tells you about what are the downstream opportunities that lies ahead of Deepak Nitrate, right? So this is all about ability to scale. I think that's it.
Okay.
Thanks, Sai.
Thank you, sir.
So
Sir,
if you have any
before
question, you can...
I have a few questions, sir. Before I end this session, I have one request. My viewers also will have this question. See, your track record is commendable. 2012 to till 50% CAGR is something which is huge. Generally, people aspire for 15% CAGR. You have delivered 50% CAGR. So that means some strategies which you follow. I think if you can share that process to my viewers, I am sure that will be very, very helpful. Not in this session. I want that promise sometime whenever you are comfortable. I want one more session from your end on that topic.
Definitely will do that.
Okay. Sir, coming to questions part, how do you see fluorochemical space opportunity and the valuations part right now?
As I said, fluorine, so except the valuation, I like everything. Okay. So the valuation, I'm not, on valuation, I'm not very comfortable with this kind of valuation for fluorination. I think what has happened is people are actually discounting the next 3 years growth in the valuation today itself. So I'm not that comfortable with the valuation. But if you look at the business or the fluorination space, I think there are immense opportunities in the fluorination. As I said, it's a cleaner chemistry. So a lot of applications are actually moving to the fluorine molecule. So a lot of applications are now using fluorine molecules, and we have very few players in the fluorination right now.
Yeah.
So, but again,
Deepak is also entering into
everybody
fluorination,
chasing.
right?
I think pardon.
Deepak is also trying to enter fluorination segment.
Yes.
Okay.
So Deepak is already working on some molecule. I think in the con call they have mentioned that they are developing the platform for fluorination and photochlorination. So it will be very interesting what kind of molecule they develop in the fluorination and what scale up they can do in fluorination. But I'm very sure they will make it big. Yes.
Okay. So second thing, this EV chemical side, there are few companies which are working on. Do you like any companies there?
So on the EV side, there is one company which is Tatva Chintan, which I mentioned in the chemistry side. They're working on electrolytic salts, but still it's very small part of their overall top line. So it's almost, I think, 1 or 2% of the top line, very small. Second is Neogen Chemical. They are working on the lithium chemicals. So that will also go in the EV batteries. So I think, again, the valuation is a hurdle for me in Neogen. So Neogens were trading at, I think, some 80 or 90 P multiple. So again, I think that's another hurdle. There is, apart from these two, I don't remember any other company working in the EV space.
Okay. Do you still bullish on Deepak Nitrate after this massive run-up which happened, sir? Because it delivered 10x return in.
Very bullish. As I said, they will be generating almost 10,000 crore cash flow after FY25 in next 5 years, and just look at their ROC that they are generating last few years. So if I just assume that they are able to generate say 25-30% ROC with that kind of cash flow, so then you are talking of almost tripling the PAT, right? So I'm very bullish, and the valuation is in your favor. So the valuation is right now very, very reasonable, very, because people still considers Deepak Nitrate as a phenol or the DASDA company. So they still feel it's a commodity chemical. So I do agree to a certain extent that it's a commodity chemical, but you need to look at a longer term picture. So why they have created a phenol acetone plant, right? So since they have created the phenol acetone plant, they have actually created the entry barriers. And just look at the opportunities in the downstream products. So they are now aspiring to manufacture solvents. So they are aspiring to become the best, largest in the Asia in solvents. Now, if you hear the conference calls of a lot of pharma companies recently, Q2 and Q3 calls, everybody is screaming about the solvent prices. And now Deepak is actually putting up a very large capacity in solvents. So they will be Asia's #1 in solvents. So you can understand what will happen to their margins and what will happen to their profits.
Sir, what's your take on this part? Let's say, for example, as we are bullish on pharma and chemical, and there will be massive opportunity in coming years. How about looking at companies like GMM, pfaudler, HLE Glasscoat kind of, because these guys are also going to see massive sales because if pharma and chemical sector grows, right?
So GMM and HLE both has got a long runway in terms of the capex, because every chemical company is announcing the capex, and these are the people who are going to serve them, right?
Yes.
But the only factor is the valuation again. So if you look at the valuation of the GMM or HLE, the valuation is, I think, is not reasonable, because these are finally ultimately these are the project companies, right? They are EPC kind of players. So so there is no recurring kind of revenue or recurring kind of income they will have. So say after 5 years, when the capex speed slows down, then obviously their top line cannot sustain at this particular growth rate. So the valuation that people are giving, I think, is not reasonable.
So what
you need to understand the difference between the chemical company and the company which is into EPC supplying to the chemical company. So there is always a recurring cash flow that we talk about, right?
Yes. So what's your take on a company like Fine Organics, as you're bullish on that nutrition chemical segment?
Yeah, so Fine Organics has got a very wonderful product portfolio. So they are leaders in the oleochemical. They supply to the food bakery industry. So they have antioxidants, emulsifiers. Their product portfolio is amazing. They have got a very good distribution network as well. Again, I am coming to the same point. So again, valuation it actually keeps me away from fine organics. So valuation is, I think, is very, very high. So if you look at their margin profile and their valuation, I think doesn't match.
Okay. Last question from my side. What's your take on companies like Jubilant Ingrevia and Valiant Organics?
I will skip this. So company specific, talking about company specific, little difficult.
Okay.
So
on the business front,
So yes, so Jubilant Ingrevia is having multiple products. So they are leaders in diketene chemistry. They are leaders in ethyl acetate, and both the chemistries are doing well. But they are doing too many things. I think they are doing too many things. In case of Valiant, I think they have started the PAP plant.
Yeah.
So let's see how successful they are in running the PAP plant. So I think that will decide the valuation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fantastic session, sir. I'm sure my viewers will have a lot of things to take. Thanks a lot for taking out your time. And as promised, I need one more session on that part, how to generate such kind of a massive return. Because many retail investors, they don't know that part. They actually struggle with that part. They buy some tips and all instead of following some process, because without that process, you cannot generate consistent that return over a long period of time.
But let me tell you that this is not, so it takes long time to understand the process. And it takes a lot of hard work actually to understand the business. So I always keep saying that always focus on the businesses. Always try to understand the business. Don't try to focus on the price. Price will keep fluctuating. But business, once you understand the business, the conviction will come from your business understanding. And if you have conviction, then only the patience will come. A lot of time what happens is people are not able to generate multi-baggers because they sell too early. And they sell too early because they don't understand they don't have that business understanding. So they can't hold on for a very long time.
So they can't react to the price and they react to news.
Yes, exactly. So I think bottom line is you need to understand the business. I think that's the only truth in the market. Business understanding is the only truth in the market. The rest all is, I think, is all false. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Thanks a lot for this session.
Thanks a lot, Sai, for hosting me. Thanks a lot to all your viewers. Thanks. We'll see you again.
నా ఈ ఎంటైర్ కాన్వర్జేషన్లో ఏదైతే ఇండివిజువల్ స్టాక్స్ గురించి డిస్కషన్ జరిగిందో అది మీకు అర్థమైందని అనుకున్నాను. అండ్ కమింగ్ టు ఈ ఎంటైర్ కాన్వర్జేషన్ నుంచి మనం కెమికల్ సెక్టర్లో ఇన్వెస్ట్ చేయాలనుకున్నప్పుడు రీసెర్చ్ చేసేటప్పుడు మనం తీసుకెళ్లాల్సిన కీ టేక్ అవే పాయింట్స్ విషయంకి వచ్చినట్లయితే, ఫస్ట్ ఏదైనా సెక్టర్లో మనం ఇన్వెస్ట్ చేసే ముందు చూడాల్సిన మేజర్ పాయింట్ ఏంటి, ఆ సెక్టర్ గ్రో అవడానికి ఉన్న కీ ట్రిగర్స్ని మనం చూడాలి. ఎందుకంటే ఆ గ్రోత్ గురించి మనకు అర్థమైనప్పుడే మనం ఆ సెక్టర్లో ఇన్వెస్ట్ చేసి లాంగ్ టర్మ్ హోల్డ్ చేయగలం కదా. నా కెమికల్ సెక్టర్ విషయంకి వచ్చేస్తే రెండు కీ ట్రిగర్స్ ఉన్నాయి. ఒకటి ఇంపోర్ట్ సబ్స్టిట్యూషన్. కరెంట్లీ మనం $56 బిలియన్ వర్త్ కెమికల్స్ని ఇంపోర్ట్ చేసుకున్నాం వేరియస్ అదర్ కంట్రీస్ నుంచి, మన వేరియస్ అదర్ ఇండస్ట్రీస్లోని యూసేజ్ కోసం ఇంపోర్ట్ చేసుకున్నాం. నా ఇంపోర్ట్ సబ్స్టిట్యూషన్ వల్ల మన డొమెస్టిక్ కంపెనీస్కి ఆ సేల్ వెళ్ళినట్టయితే డెఫినెట్లీ మన డొమెస్టిక్ కంపెనీస్ ఒక టాప్ లైన్లో మనం మంచి గ్రోత్ చూడొచ్చు. అండ్ అలాగే చైనాలో ఏదైతే ఇష్యూస్ ఉన్నాయి కెమికల్ ఇండస్ట్రీ రిలేటెడ్గా, దానివల్ల కూడా మన ఇండియన్ డొమెస్టిక్ కెమికల్ కంపెనీస్కి ఎక్స్పోర్ట్ ఆర్డర్స్ కూడా బాగా పెరుగుతున్నాయి. దీనివల్ల కూడా టాప్ లైన్లో మంచి గ్రోత్ మనం ఎక్స్పెక్ట్ చేయొచ్చు. సో ఓవరాల్గా ఇండస్ట్రీ గ్రో అవడానికి అయితే ఇంపోర్ట్ సబ్స్టిట్యూషన్ అండ్ అలాగే ఎక్స్పోర్ట్స్, ఈ రెండు ఆపర్చునిటీస్ వల్ల మేజర్గా మన ఇండస్ట్రీలో మంచి గ్రోత్ ఎక్స్పెక్ట్ చేయొచ్చు. అండ్ నౌ ఇండస్ట్రీ అనగానే ఇంట్రోలో తేజ కన్ఫ్యూజ్ అయినట్టుగా చాలామంది అగైన్ కన్ఫ్యూజ్ అవుతాం. ఎందుకంటే కెమికల్ సెక్టర్ ఈజ్ ఎ వాస్ట్ సెక్టర్, చాలా కంపెనీస్ ఉంటాయి. నౌ ఇన్ని కంపెనీస్లో మనం ఎక్కడ ఫోకస్ చేయాలంటే, ఇంటర్వ్యూలో జీవన్ పట్వా సార్ మనకి క్లియర్గా చెప్పారు. మేజర్గా మార్జిన్స్ ఎక్కువగా ఉండేది అండ్ అలాగే ఎంట్రీ బ్యారియర్స్ ఎక్కువగా ఉండి రెండు కెమికల్ థీమ్స్ ఏంటంటే, ఒకటి ఫ్లేవర్స్ అండ్ ఫ్రాగ్రెన్సెస్ అండ్ అలాగే పర్సనల్ కేర్. ఈ రెండు సెగ్మెంట్స్లోని మార్జిన్స్ బాగుంటాయి అండ్ అలాగే ఎంట్రీ బ్యారియర్స్ కూడా బాగుంటాయి. కాబట్టి లాంగ్ టర్మ్లో మనం సస్టైన్డ్ గ్రోత్ని అయితే ఎక్స్పెక్ట్ చేయొచ్చు. సో మనం ఈ సెక్టర్లో ఇన్వెస్ట్ చేసేటప్పుడు ఆ రెండు ఇండస్ట్రీస్కి సప్లై చేసే కెమికల్ కంపెనీస్ ఏవైతే వాటి మీద ఫోకస్ చేయడం వుడ్ బి బెటర్. థర్డ్, ఏదైనా కెమికల్ స్టాక్లో ఇన్వెస్ట్ చేసే ముందు జీవన్ పట్వా సార్ మనకి ఒక ఇన్వెస్ట్మెంట్ ఫ్రేమ్వర్క్ని షేర్ చేశారు. అది చాలా ఇంపార్టెంట్ స్లైడ్. అది ఆ స్లైడ్ని స్క్రీన్ షాట్ తీసుకుని సేవ్ చేసుకుని ఉంచుకోవడానికి ప్రయత్నించండి. లేదా మీరు నోట్స్ మెయింటైన్ చేస్తున్నట్టయితే కెమికల్ సెక్టర్ని రీసెర్చ్ చేసేటప్పుడు ఈ ఫ్రేమ్వర్క్ని ఫాలో అవ్వాలని చెప్పి రాసుకొని ఉంచుకోండి. ఎందుకంటే ఆ ఫ్రేమ్వర్క్లోని ఎస్పెషల్లీ సేఫ్టీ పార్ట్ ఏదైతే ఉన్నదో అది చాలా ఇంపార్టెంట్ రోల్ అయితే ప్లే చేస్తుంది. మెనీ కంపెనీస్ మనం రీసెంట్గా చూసినాం, యాక్సిడెంట్లు జరగడం కానీ, లేకపోతే వాళ్ళు పొల్యూషన్ నామ్స్ని సరిగ్గా ఫాలో చేయకపోవడం కానీ, ఇలాంటి ఇష్యూస్ వల్ల బేసికలీ ఏమవుతుందంటే మనం ఎక్స్పోర్ట్ చేసేటప్పుడు
గ్లోబల్ ఎంఎన్సీ కంపెనీస్ ఏవైతే ఆ కంపెనీస్ అని ఇలాంటివి స్ట్రిక్ట్గా చూస్తుంటాయి అన్నమాట. వాళ్ళు ఎవరి దగ్గర నుంచి అయితే ప్రోడక్ట్ కొంటారో వాళ్ళు కూడా ఈ కంప్లైంట్స్ నామ్స్ అన్ని ఫాలో అవుతున్న వాళ్ళ దగ్గర నుంచే కొనడానికి ప్రయత్నిస్తారు. సో అందు గురించి అని మనం ఏవైతే కంపెనీస్ ఎఫ్డిఏ రెగ్యులేషన్స్, యూఎస్ ఎఫ్డిఏ కానీ వేరియస్ అదర్ రెగ్యులేటర్స్ ఒక రెగ్యులేషన్స్ పర్ఫెక్ట్గా ఫాలో అవుతూ అండ్ జీరో డిశ్చార్జ్ పాలసీ మెయింటైన్ చేస్తూ అండ్ అలాగే ట్రాక్ రికార్డ్ కూడా మంచి ట్రాక్ రికార్డ్ సేఫ్టీ సైడ్ మెయింటైన్ చేసిన కంపెనీస్ ఏవైతే ఉన్నాయో వాటిలో ఇన్వెస్ట్ చేయడం బెటర్. ఎందుకంటే ఇక్కడ ఒక్క చిన్న ఇన్సిడెంట్ చాలు స్టాక్ ప్రైస్ 40-50% కరెక్ట్ అయిపోవడానికి. మనం ప్రాక్టికల్లీ చూసాం కూడా కొన్ని కేసెస్లోని. సో ఎప్పుడైతే యాక్సిడెంట్స్ జరుగుతాయి ప్లాంట్లోని, లేదా ఫర్ ఎగ్జాంపుల్ సేఫ్టీ రిలేటెడ్గా కానీ పొల్యూషన్ రిలేటెడ్ కానీ ఏవైతే రిస్క్స్ బయటకు వస్తాయో మనకు స్టాక్లో మ్యాసివ్ హ్యామరింగ్ జరుగుతుంది అండ్ మనం ఎగ్జిట్ అవ్వడం కూడా కష్టం. సో ఈ సెక్టర్లో మేజర్ రిస్క్ కాబట్టి మనం ఇక్కడ చాలా జాగ్రత్తగా ఉండాలి. సెకండ్, ఈ సెక్టర్లో ఇన్వెస్ట్ చేసేటప్పుడు ప్రొడక్ట్ పోర్ట్ఫోలియో మీద కూడా ఫోకస్ చేయడం చాలా ఇంపార్టెంట్. ఎందుకంటే ప్రొడక్ట్ పోర్ట్ఫోలియో మీద మనం ఫోకస్ చేసినప్పుడే ఆ కంపెనీ ఏవైతే ప్రొడక్ట్స్ని సేల్ చేస్తుందో ఆ ప్రొడక్ట్స్లోని వీళ్ళ లీడర్షిప్ గురించి కానీ ఇన్నోవేషన్ గురించి కానీ మనకు అర్థమవుతుంది. ఇన్నోవేషన్ అగైన్ కీ ట్రిగర్. ఈ కెమికల్ సెక్టర్లోని మనం ఇన్వెస్ట్ చేసేటప్పుడు కొన్ని కెమికల్స్ అప్పుడు మనం ఇన్వెస్ట్ చేసే టైంకి స్పెషాలిటీ కెమికల్స్ అయి ఉంటాయి. బట్ ఓవర్ ఏ పీరియడ్ ఎక్కువ మంది మ్యానుఫ్యాక్చర్ చేస్తున్నారు అనుకోండి సేమ్ కెమికల్ని, అది ఏంటంటే కమోడిటీ కెమికల్ అయిపోద్ది. కమోడిటీ అయిపోయినప్పుడు ఏమవుతుంది, ఆటోమేటిక్గా మార్జిన్స్ తగ్గిపోతుంటాయి అన్నమాట. సో ఎప్పటికప్పుడు R&D టీమ్ ఇన్నోవేషన్ తీసుకొస్తున్న కొద్దీ వాళ్ళు మార్జిన్స్ బెటర్గా మెయింటైన్ చేయగలరు. సో బెటర్ R&D టీమ్ ఉండి బెటర్గా R&D మీద స్పెండ్ చేసిన కంపెనీస్ ఏవైతే ఉన్నాయి అండ్ ఇన్నోవేషన్ మీద వర్క్ చేసిన కంపెనీలు ఎప్పటికప్పుడు న్యూ ప్రోడక్ట్స్ తీసుకొచ్చే కంపెనీల మీద ఫోకస్ చేయడం వుడ్ బి బెటర్. థర్డ్, మనకి జీవన్ పట్వా సార్ దీపక్ నైట్రేట్ అండ్ లారస్ ల్యాబ్స్ ఒక కేస్ స్టడీస్ తీసుకుని ఎగ్జిక్యూషన్ క్యాపబిలిటీస్ గురించి అండ్ అలాగే ఎబిలిటీ టు స్కేల్ గురించి ఎక్స్ప్లెయిన్ చేశారు కదా. ఈ రెండు కీ ట్రిగ్గర్స్, గ్రోత్ ఈ రెండు ట్రిగ్గర్స్ ద్వారా వస్తుంది. సో ఈ ట్రిగ్గర్స్ని కూడా మనం ఏదైనా స్టాక్లో ఇన్వెస్ట్ చేసేటప్పుడు మనం రీసెర్చ్ చేసేటప్పుడు చూడాలి, చెక్ చేసిన తర్వాత ఇన్వెస్ట్ చేయడం వుడ్ బి బెటర్. సో ఓవరాల్గా ఈ వీడియోలో అయితే మీకు కెమికల్ సెక్టర్ గురించి ఒక మంచి క్లారిటీ అయితే వచ్చిందని అనుకుంటున్నాను. అండ్ ఇలా వేరే సెక్టర్స్లోని మార్కెట్లోని ఎక్స్పర్ట్లను మీ దగ్గర తీసుకొచ్చి ఇంటర్వ్యూస్ ఎందుకు చేస్తామంటే బికాస్ ఆ సెక్టర్లో మీరు ఇన్వెస్ట్ చేసేటప్పుడు ఆ సెక్టర్ గురించి మీకు ఫుల్ ఫ్లెజ్డ్ అండర్స్టాండింగ్ పెరిగినప్పుడే మీరు ఆ సెక్టర్లో మంచి కంపెనీస్ని పికప్ చేయగలరు. అండ్ మంచి కంపెనీస్ని పికప్ చేయడమే కాదు లాంగ్ టర్మ్ హోల్డ్ చేసి మల్టీ బ్యాగర్ రిటర్న్ సంపాదించగలరు. సో ఈ మోటివ్తోనే వేరియస్ ఎక్స్పర్ట్స్ని వేరే సెక్టర్స్ నుంచి తీసుకొస్తున్నాం. సో చాలా రోజుల నుంచి ఉన్న డిమాండ్ ఇది కెమికల్ సెక్టర్ రిలేటెడ్గా. సో ఆ డిమాండ్ అయితే ఈరోజు ఫుల్ఫిల్ చేసామని అనుకుంటున్నా. అండ్ మేము పెట్టిన ఎఫర్ట్ మీకు హెల్ప్ఫుల్ ఇప్పటివరకు వీడియోని లైక్ చేయనట్టయితే వీడియోని తప్పకుండా లైక్ చేయడానికి ప్రయత్నించండి. అండ్ ఈ వీడియో మీ ఫ్రెండ్స్ అండ్ ఫ్యామిలీ మెంబర్స్కి హెల్ప్ఫుల్ అవుతుందంటే వాళ్ళకి తప్పకుండా షేర్ చేయడానికి ప్రయత్నించండి. అండ్ మీరు ఇదే ఫస్ట్ టైం మన మనీ పర్స్ ఛానల్కి వచ్చి ఛానల్ సబ్స్క్రైబ్ చేయనట్టయితే ఇక ఛానల్ లోగో మీద క్లిక్ చేసి ఛానల్ సబ్స్క్రైబ్ చేస్తూ పక్కన బెల్ ఐకాన్లోని ఆల్ నోటిఫికేషన్స్ యాక్టివేట్ చేసుకోండి. నేను సాయి కృష్ణపత్రి మరొక ఇంట్రెస్టింగ్ వీడియోతో కలుస్తాను. టిల్ దెన్ హ్యావ్ ఫన్.